Set against the bustling backdrop of South Korea, a young woman, seemingly living the life of a true recluse, was abruptly jolted from her slumber by the insistent blaring honk of a car from downstairs. With a sigh, she rose and, peering through a small, strategically cut hole in a piece of cardboard she had painstakingly glued to her apartment window, observed the offending vehicle. Beside it, what appeared to be a high school student walked. From the car, a man's voice, deep and resonant, was clearly heard, urging the girl to get in. She then shifted her gaze, settling on a woman in the apartment directly across the street who was casually smoking a cigarette. The neighbor, noticing the peek, offered a warm smile. The young woman, a hermit by nature, immediately pulled back, slamming the cardboard shut to avoid further interaction, shutting out her momentary connection with the outside world. It was then laid bare that this reclusive young woman was, in fact, Hyun-Heup. She bore a truly strange phenomenon, a supernatural burden she had wrestled with for as long as her memory stretched. This peculiar affliction was what she internally dubbed an S-line, a vivid crimson thread that emanated from the head of every single person, stretching out and visually connecting to anyone they had ever been intimate with. Most individuals she knew sported more than a single red line sprouting from their head, and Hyun-Heup, with her uncanny ability, could see each and every one of them as clear as day. This extraordinary power, however, was far from a blessing. It was a heavy cross to bear, one not without its own crushing consequences. Hyun-Heup vividly recalled an incident from her childhood, back when she was just a little girl, an event that had unequivocally set her on the path to her solitary existence. She had, with her innocent yet piercing sight, been able to discern multiple red lines emanating from her father's head. While one line was undeniably tethered to her mother, others, horrifyingly, stretched out to different individuals. One, in particular, connected straight to her aunt, a damning scarlet proof that her father had been brazenly cheating. An innocent drawing she made, a child's simple rendition of what she saw, led to her mother's devastating discovery. The revelation, raw and painful, caused her mother to completely snap, tragically culminating in her stabbing her husband to death. Believing, with the crushing weight of a child's guilt, that this horrific incident was entirely her fault, Hyun-Heup painfully realized that her unique power was far more of a curse than any kind of blessing. It was the one thing she wished, with every fiber of her being, she could be rid of. She had, in one desperate way or another, made multiple attempts to end her own life, yet every single time, as if fate itself, or perhaps the universe, stubbornly refused to let her die and shed this burdensome power, she inexplicably found herself surviving. This relentless cycle of survival, coupled with the tragic past, ultimately forged in her a new grim ambition to find out the ultimate reason these enigmatic red lines existed, to track down the one who created them, to discover if there was another person in the world who shared her agonizing knowledge, and most importantly, how to break free from this curse. Later that day, the neighbor from across the street, a woman named Hee-Won, cheerfully rang Hyun-Heup's doorbell, clearly wanting to extend a neighborly greeting, having just moved in. Hyun-Heup, ever the embodiment of reclusion, steadfastly refused to open the door, or even offer a polite greeting in return. The woman, however, was not so easily deterred. She amiably introduced herself as the new neighbor, and as a gesture of goodwill had brought Hyun-Heup some fresh fruit as a present. After a small, utterly one-sided conversation, Hee-Won gently left the fruit in front of the door and, with a kind smile, returned to her own apartment. Only then, once the coast was truly clear, did Hyun-Heup cautiously open the door, retrieve the plastic bag, and tentatively eat the fruit. Somewhere else, at a police department office, a man had just clocked in. This was the same individual who had been driving the car that had honked so insistently earlier that morning. The very sound that had roused Hyun-Heup from her sleep. This man was Ji-Wook. As soon as he entered the office, he was greeted by his colleagues, a mix of weary smiles and grim professionalism. He confided in one of them, expressing concern about his niece, the very high school student he'd been trying to pick up earlier, a girl named Seon-A. Ji-Wook, being a rather dashing and charming man, was undeniably a bit of a player in his personal life. He possessed an effortless charisma that seemed to draw women into his orbit, even managing to flirt playfully with a female colleague who was about to get married herself. Meanwhile, at the same time, in the city at a local high school, a sinister scene was unfolding on the rooftop. A small group of bullies was cornering and tormenting a quiet, vulnerable girl. Then, the leader of the group, a menacing girl named Hyun-Heup, swaggered in with a mop in hand, eagerly joining in the cruel sport of tormenting the girl. The bullied girl turned out to be Ji-Wook's niece, Seon-A. Hyun-Heup had been shaking Seon-A down for some money, and in a truly chilling moment, she threatened to throw Seon-A right off the rooftop if she dared to refuse. Seon-A, fully aware that her life hung precariously in the balance, found herself utterly powerless and had no choice but to comply with the bully's demands. Later that day, Ji-Wook and his colleague, Dong-sik, found themselves knee-deep investigating a grim crime scene. The victim, a woman, had been killed in her own house, a brutal end to her life. Ji-Wook, with his keen eye for detail, couldn't help but notice that despite the general disarray throughout the house, the bedroom was strangely, meticulously tidy, almost as if someone had gone to great lengths to clean it up. As he methodically checked around the premises, his gaze landed on a food box from a nearby restaurant, one that wasn't particularly well known. A hunch hit him. He believed that this unassuming restaurant might just hold the key, a breadcrumb trail that could lead him straight to the perpetrator of the murder. Shortly thereafter, another detective arrived on the scene, delivering a fresh piece of intelligence to Ji-Wook. A witness had come forward, claiming to have seen a man wearing a helmet entering the victim's room the night before her lifeless body was discovered. The man appeared to be a delivery guy, and Ji-Wook, putting two and two together, felt a strong conviction that this individual might have a crucial connection to the case. Further investigation, as the pieces slowly started to fit, revealed that the victim had a boyfriend whom she had just recently broken up with. Sensing a potential lead, Ji-Wook immediately tasked Dong-sik with digging into that angle, telling him to investigate the ex-boyfriend. That evening, a sense of unease settled over Hyun-Heup as she cautiously opened her door just a crack to retrieve some delivered packages. There, nestled among them, she noticed a plastic bag filled with fresh apples, a thoughtful gift from Hee-won. She took the bag inside and, as she munched on an apple, she found herself idly watching the news. Suddenly, her attention was piqued. The broadcast was, coincidentally, about the very murder that Ji-Wook was currently investigating. And there, frozen in the background of the news footage, she saw him, a helmeted guy, clearly trying to stay out of sight behind a wall, seemingly eavesdropping on the scene. That very moment, a chilling realization washed over her. The man had only one single S-line on his head, a stark anomaly in a world full of tangled connections, and this immediately sparked a deep suspicion within her. Soon after, as if drawn by an invisible thread, the same helmeted man showed up near Hyun-Heup's apartment building, and she spotted him straight away. A prickle of danger went down her spine. Hyun-Heup rushed to grab her phone, intending to call the police, but it had run out of juice. She quickly plugged it in to charge, her eyes still glued to the man. She watched as the helmeted man entered the apartment building across the street and then, to her utter surprise, stepped into Hee-won's apartment. Fortunately, her phone buzzed to life with just enough battery, and she quickly dialed the police. As she spoke, still monitoring the mysterious helmeted man from her window, she saw that Hee-won was clearly not in danger. The man was her partner, her boyfriend. A cold wave of realization hit Hyun-Heup. She might have just accused the wrong person, made a huge mistake. Realizing her error, she decided to hang up the call, but one nagging question still bounced around in her mind, like a ping-pong ball. Why did the man only have that S-line connected to Hee-won after they met, as if it was their very first time interacting? This unsettling incident, so close to home, only served to trigger her past trauma, stirring up old, painful memories. The next day, still reeling from the brutal beating she'd endured at the hands of Hyun and her relentless gang, Seon-A made the conscious decision to skip school altogether. Hyun, however, being the quintessential bully, immediately jumped to conclusions, thinking that Seon-A was deliberately avoiding school because she hadn't coughed up the promised money. So, with a cruel smirk, Hyun went straight for Seon-A's locker, prying it open with malicious intent, hoping to find some hidden cash or something to hold over her head. Inside, to her surprise, she found a simple paper bag containing a Bayong Cheole and, tucked innocently within, a love letter. On the other hand, Ji-Wook returned home that day, only to find Seon-A's absence from school quite perplexing. She asked him for some money. And it was then, in that moment, that he finally noticed the telltale bruises marring her face and all over her body. A red flag immediately went up. Smelling a rat, he pressed her, asking what in the world had happened. But Seon-A stubbornly refused to spill the beans, opting instead to lock herself away in her room, keeping her painful secret bottled up. Soon after, as Ji-Wook took a drag from his cigarette, his phone buzzed. It was Dong-sik, his colleague, on the line, delivering some interesting news. Someone had called the police regarding the helmeted man. Dong-sik highlighted a crucial detail. The fact that the perpetrator might be the helmeted man hadn't yet been leaked to the public, meaning the caller seemed to know something and had some insider info. Dong-sik then revealed the caller was none other than Ji-Wook's own neighbor, and urged him to go check it out. Not one to let a hot lead go cold, Ji-Wook immediately made his way to meet the caller, who turned out to be Hyun-Heup herself. He tried ringing her doorbell and knocking firmly on her door, but there was no response, despite Hyun-Heup actually standing, silent and unseen, right on the other side. Then, a man wearing glasses emerged from upstairs and, seeing Ji-Wook's efforts, informed him that the girl in that apartment was a complete recluse and wouldn't come out no matter what. After the man left, Ji-Wook, ever persistent, once again knocked on the door, but once again, silence. Just as he was ready to give up, Hyun-Heup finally, hesitantly, opened the door a crack. Ji-Wook, not missing a beat, immediately grilled her about the call and what she knew. Hyun-Heup, flustered, revealed that she had indeed seen a helmeted man enter apartment 204 across the street, initially thinking he was the perpetrator of the latest murder case. But, she quickly added, she realized she had made a wrong accusation because the man was just the woman's boyfriend. When Ji-Wook, sensing something was amiss, asked her why she was home alone despite being a student, Hyun-Heup, flustered, quickly closed the door, cutting off the conversation. Later that evening, the same helmeted man was spotted once more, a looming presence in the twilight. But this time, he didn't head into the apartment building across the street. Instead, he made his way into the very building Hyun-Heup called home. Hyun-Heup, having noticed the man's approach, cautiously peeked through the hole in her door. Their eyes met for a fleeting moment, and the man seemed to notice her, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. Meanwhile, in another bustling part of the city, Seon-A sat alone, a picture of quiet apprehension, seemingly waiting for someone. Her phone buzzed, and a message from Hae-young popped up, a harsh reminder demanding she come to school tomorrow with the money she owed her. As Seon-A tucked her phone away, her gaze snagged on an old lady who had just emerged from a bank across the street, clutching an envelope, visibly bulging with cash. The desperate need for money, a gnawing ache in Seon-A's gut, pushed her to the brink of doing the unthinkable. She began to tail the old lady, following her into a narrow alley, her intention crystal clear, to snatch the bag. But just as she was about to make her move, a group of men suddenly passed by, and Seon-A, startled, quickly backed down, abandoning her plan. Then, at the very end of the alley, she spotted 3 familiar faces, 3 boys from her school, who also happened to be the boyfriends of her bullies. At the same time, Ji-Wook and Dong-sik were catching a well-deserved break in their office. Dong-sik revealed that his investigation had unearthed another suspect for the murder case. He'd discovered the victim had a boyfriend named Jung-min, a math teacher at the very school Ji-Wook's niece, Seon-A, attended. To top it off, Jung-min lived in the apartment building right across from Ji-Wook's. Dong-sik concluded that the man's connection to the murder case seemed to be a sheer bizarre coincidence. When Dong-sik showed Ji-Wook a photo of the man they were discussing, Ji-Wook's eyes widened in recognition. It was the same guy he'd spoken to the day he'd gone to Hyun-Heup's apartment. Sensing a potential lead that could break the case wide open, they decided to investigate. But before they could even get out the door, Ji-Wook received a call and, explaining he'd catch up later, left Dong-sik to investigate the new lead all alone. As it turned out, Ji-Wook's urgent call was from a hospital regarding his father. He rushed to the hospital, his heart pounding, desperate to know what had happened. Upon arrival, he was met with alarming news. His father was missing from his room, and the entire hospital staff seemed utterly bewildered, unable to find him. Ji-Wook, ignoring the bewildered nurse, had a gut feeling about where his father would be. He found him on the balcony, perched precariously on the fence, looking as if he was about to jump. In that terrifying split-second moment, Ji-Wook seemed to freeze, a strange reluctance holding him still, watching as his father teetered on the edge. Fortunately, a team of nurses arrived just in the nick of time and managed to bring him down from the ledge. Meanwhile, Dong-sik had just arrived at the suspect's apartment. He pressed the doorbell, but there was no reply. He then tried the doorknob, and to his surprise, the door was unlocked. He cautiously stepped inside, finding the apartment eerily empty. He ventured further, discovering a room painted in a striking, unsettling red. Just as he was calling Ji-Wook to relay his findings, the suspect, Jung-min, suddenly jumped him from behind with a heavy metal bat. Dong-sik bravely tried to defend himself, but as expected, he was no match for an armed assailant and was quickly overpowered. Ji-Wook, realizing his colleague was in grave danger, immediately rushed to the scene. Shortly after, Dong-sik sat tied to a chair, helpless. The suspect, revealed to be Jung-min himself, had donned his helmet and gone to meet his girlfriend in the building across the street. Hyun-Heup, from her vantage point, recognized the looming danger and watched, her heart thumping, as Jung-min walked towards the neighboring building. She knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the bone, that things were about to go south for Hee-won. Knowing she couldn't just rely on calling the police, she decided to take matters into her own trembling hands. She grabbed a kitchen knife and stepped out of her room, feeling a profound reluctance, yet forcing herself forward. She walked down the stairs, each step a tremor, haunted by thoughts of imminent danger and the deep scars of her past trauma. As soon as she stepped outside the building, her feet finally gave way. Her vision blurred, then went completely dark, and she fainted. Her sunglasses, which she used to shield her eyes from the S-lines, slipped from her face. In her faint, a hazy vision of her mother appeared, and Hyun-Heup instinctively reached out to her. Jung-min finally met Hee-won, and she seemed utterly surprised to see him. It was then revealed that Jung-min too possessed the ability to see the S-line, and he had witnessed for himself the unsettling truth. His girlfriend had a multitude of S-lines on her, unequivocally revealing that she had been intimate with many men besides him. This revelation, a punch to the gut, was his breaking point. Enraged, he attacked her, his hands closing around her throat, fully intending to end her life. But just then, Hyun-Heup, having miraculously overcome her paralyzing fear, managed to arrive at the scene, though still visibly trembling. Jung-min, seeing Hyun-Heup standing there, trembling with a kitchen knife clutched in her hand, confronted her calmly, a chilling smirk on his face, knowing full well that the girl in front of him wouldn't be able to act on her threat. He then, in a terrifyingly composed manner, took the knife from her and stabbed Hyun-Heup, leaving her bleeding on the floor. With his objective still in mind, he turned back to his girlfriend, ready to continue his brutal plan. Soon after the chaotic confrontation, Ji-Wook finally burst onto the scene. His eyes immediately caught sight of Hyun-Heup's sunglasses lying discarded on the ground, a chilling sign that things had indeed gone terribly wrong. He sprinted upstairs, his heart pounding. He found Hyun-Heup's apartment door wide open, and stepping inside, he was met with a bizarre sight. A sprawling conspiracy map with intricate strings pinned to the wall, hinting at Hyun-Heup's secret life. Looking across the street, he saw the grim tableau. Hyun-Heup was lying wounded in a pool of blood, while Jung-min was brutally choking his girlfriend. Ji-Wook quickly drew his gun but hesitated, a flicker of reluctance keeping his finger off the trigger. It wasn't until Hyun-Heup, with a surge of desperate energy, moved and stabbed Jung-min in the thigh that Ji-Wook found his opening. Just as Jung-min lunged to stab Hyun-Heup, Ji-Wook pulled the trigger, and Jung-min was shot. As Jung-min gasped for his last breath, Hyun-Heup heard him murmur something about the lines beginning to disappear. A cold realization dawned on her. Jung-min was talking about the S-lines. Later, the ambulance arrived, sirens wailing, to evacuate the wounded. In that moment, Hyun-Heup had a profound realization. Jung-min too had been able to see the S-lines. She recalled seeing Jung-min instinctively reaching for his glasses during the struggle, and surmised that these specific glasses might be the key to seeing the lines. After the ambulance departed, Ji-Wook approached Hyun-Heup, his concern evident, asking if she was okay after such a life-threatening injury. Hyun-Heup, ever stoic, assured him she was fine, and he needn't worry. As Ji-Wook asked her to come with him to the office, his niece, Seon-ae, unexpectedly showed up, seemingly already knowing about Hyun-Heup, a curious connection. That night, Ji-Wook confronted Seon-ae about the suspected bullying she was enduring at school. Seon-ae, clearly not wanting to deal with her uncle's intrusion, sharply told him to mind his own business and not meddle in hers. She declared she only needed his money, not his attention. Then, just before Ji-Wook left, Seon-ae dropped a bombshell. She knew Hyun-Heup. They had been classmates back in middle school. At dawn, Hyun-Heup, perched contemplatively on a rooftop, received a mysterious message from an unknown number. The sender claimed to know about the S-lines and instructed her to come to school. That day at school, after Hae-young had already found the humiliating love letter in Seon-a's locker, Seon-a discovered the empty paper bag sitting on her desk. The bullies, with cruel precision, had meticulously set the stage to embarrass her in front of the entire class. Unable to contain her surging anger any longer, Seon-a finally snapped and fought back, lunging to snatch the love letter from Hae-young's grasp. This ignited a furious fight between them, which was eventually broken up by their quick-acting homeroom teacher, Gyu-Jin. Gyu-Jin took Seon-a to her office and sternly inquired why she had started the altercation. Seon-a, defiant and tight-lipped, refused to say anything and simply decided to call it a day, leaving school. Then, just before she headed home, she checked her locker and, to her surprise, found a pair of glasses tucked inside. On the other hand, Ji-Wook was confronted by an annoyed Dong-sik, who clearly hadn't appreciated being left alone to investigate, leading to his beating by the suspect. Dong-sik grilled Ji-Wook about his actions, and Ji-Wook explained he was compiling a report on the latest case. Dong-sik confirmed that the perpetrator, Jung-min, had died, and insisted there was no need for further investigation. Ji-Wook, however, voiced his lingering suspicion regarding Jung-min's true motive for the murder. Dong-sik countered that Jung-min had a history of dating violence, which had led to him being fired from his previous teaching job. This information, however, only deepened Ji-Wook's unease. His nagging question was simply, why did Jung-min choose to initiate the murder a year after being fired? Moreover, Jung-min had often been heard talking about salvation, a strange detail given he wasn't known to be religious, further adding to Ji-Wook's suspicion. To appease his mounting suspicion, Ji-Wook decided to revisit and re-investigate Jung-min's apartment. During his solo investigation, he made a crucial discovery. The room where Dong-sik had been tied was not painted in red as previously thought. Instead, it was covered in an unsettling array of red lines all over the wall, entirely covering the surface, a chilling echo of the S-lines. At home, Seon-a, overcome with curiosity, used the glasses she had found. Instantly, a shimmering strand of red line popped out from above her own head. Soon after, Ji-Wook arrived home, and Seon-a, now wearing the glasses, saw a shocking sight. A multitude of red lines emanate from his head. Stunned and horrified, she immediately ran outside, and the revelation hit her like a tidal wave. In that moment, she finally, unequivocally, realized what the lines truly were. A line connecting two people who had once had sexual intercourse. At school, armed with her new vision, Seon-a made another startling observation. Her homeroom teacher, Gyu-Jin, had no S-line on her head, a profoundly strange anomaly for a woman of her age, suggesting a complete lack of sexual experience. Then she uncovered an even more shocking finding. Her bully, Hae-young, had an affair with their literature teacher, Mr. Sung-jin. That day, following the enigmatic message from the unknown number, Hyun-Heup made her way to the school in question. This led her to become Seon-a's classmate and, by extension, Hae-young's as well, setting the stage for their paths to intertwine. That same morning, Ji-Wook still had Jung-min occupying his thoughts. He was poring over a school brochure that had Jung-min's face printed on it. He noticed a critical detail. Jung-min wasn't wearing any glasses in the photo. This seemingly minor observation ignited a crucial question in his mind about Jung-min's ability to see the S-lines. He then rushed to the evidence storage to find Jung-min's glasses, but to his surprise, they were missing. Further investigation led Ji-Wook to Seon-a's school. As he entered the teacher's room, Seon-a's homeroom teacher, Gyu-Jin, noticed him and, ever the concerned educator, invited him to talk about Seon-a, revealing that Seon-a was, in fact, having a difficult time at school. Ji-Wook, however, didn't fully absorb this information. His mind was still singularly focused on the enigma of Jung-min. He finally asked directly about Jung-min, and Gyu-Jin confirmed she knew him, but she was entirely unaware of his recent heinous crime. Ji-Wook then pressed, asking if Jung-min used to wear glasses, and Gyu-Jin, after a moment of thought, definitively stated she had never known Jung-min to wear any. At the very same time, oblivious to Ji-Wook and Gyu-Jin's conversation, Hae-young and her gang once again cornered Seon-a, ready for another round of torment. Hae-young immediately demanded the money she was owed, but Seon-a, still empty-handed, had nothing to give. This time, however, a spark of defiance had ignited within Seon-a. She had, remarkably, regained the courage to defend herself. She quickly grabbed Ha-young's hand that was poised to slap her, and with newfound resolve told the bully that she wasn't afraid of her. This unexpected defiance only fueled Ha-young's already simmering anger. Seon-ae was slapped with such force that she reeled and fell to the floor. Then, in a moment of palpable tension, Hyun-Heup dramatically appeared, stepping forward to stand up for Seon-ae. Without hesitation, she grabbed Ha-young by her collar and with surprising strength dragged her to the very edge of the rooftop. Hyun-Heup seemed to intend to bring the bully down with her, threatening to jump, causing Ha-young to visibly tremble in abject fear. Hyun-Heup, now holding the undeniable higher ground, delivered a chilling warning never to mess with her or Seon-ae again. Ha-young, clearly understanding that her life was hanging by a thread, just a wrong word away from ending, knew she had no choice but to comply. Surprisingly, despite being rescued, Seon-ae wasn't entirely fond of Hyun-Heup's dramatic intervention, but she was nonetheless still deeply thankful for her help. After his meeting with Gyu-Jin, Ji-Wook went to the local bar near the scene of Jung-min's murder and quickly discovered that Jung-min had been a regular there. He approached the bartender, asking about Jung-min, and the bartender recalled him being quite a strange one. At first, Jung-min was just a quiet guy, drinking alone, then leaving the bar without anyone by his side. But then, one day, he arrived wearing glasses and began a bizarre ritual of counting numbers in the air. That peculiar behavior once led to an enraged patron, who, unable to tolerate the strangeness, violently punched him in the face. That evening, Seon-ae had just returned home when she spotted Hee-young from afar. Driven by a surge of defiance, she decided to follow her. What she then witnessed sent a jolt of satisfaction through her. Ha-young was meeting Mr. Sung-jin in front of a love hotel. Not wanting to miss this golden opportunity to finally blackmail the very bully who had tormented her throughout her school life, Seon-ae quickly pulled out her phone and snapped several pictures of Ha-young and Mr. Sung-jin as damning evidence. She then, with a triumphant smirk, sent the pictures directly to Ha-young, revealing that she now held an ace card in her hands. She felt, with a surge of newfound power, that she had finally gained the leverage to fight back against her tormentor. Ha-young, however, was not afraid, in the slightest. Being a minor, she knew that the only one who would truly get into trouble was Mr. Sung-jin, not her. This unexpected lack of fear from Ha-young, however, paradoxically sparked a new cunning idea in Seon-ae's mind. As it turned out, after failing to intimidate Hee-young, Seon-ae decided to escalate and blackmail Mr. Sung-jin instead. She sent him the incriminating photo and demanded 20 million won to keep their secret quiet. Her motives were not entirely malicious. She had a specific reason. She desperately wanted to move out of her uncle's house. She confided in Hyun-Heup that she was utterly done living with Ji-Wook and yearned for the independence of living alone. She then, somewhat abruptly, brought up Hyun-Heup's mother, asking if she was still alive. Hyun-Heup, who had been estranged from her mother and never contacted by her, wasn't sure if she was still alive. That night, Seon-ae's words, surprisingly, stirred something deep within Hyun-Heup, reminding her of the elusive warmth of family. From her window, she observed the seemingly happy scenes of families, picturing how wonderful it would be to belong to one. Yet, even in her wistful contemplation, her S-line vision couldn't be ignored. She also noticed, with a pang of familiar cynicism, how each person in those families harbored their own clandestine affairs and secrets behind each other's backs, even within what appeared to be loving units. The next day, a terrified Mr. Sung-jin confronted Ha-young about the photo. He was absolutely petrified that their illicit relationship had been exposed to others. He even hysterically accused Ha-young of having told her friends about their secret. Ha-young, however, didn't lose her composure. With an air of calm defiance, she retorted that she too was a victim, and she would certainly not deliberately reveal their illicit relationship to others. One thing she knew for sure was that this was Seon-ae's doing. Seon-ae, on the other hand, now armed with the power to see the S-line thanks to the glasses in her possession, had gained an enormous boost of confidence. She finally, truly, stood up against her bully, but in a disturbing twist, she began to transform into a bully herself. She shockingly revealed another affair involving a different teacher. She even, with calculated malice, deliberately took one of her bully's boyfriends as her own, a direct act of revenge. This brazen act, however, truly sparked a dangerous, seething anger in Ha-young's eyes. This all-false demeanor led Hyun-Heup to directly confront Seon-ae, revealing that she too possessed the power to see the S-lines. Seon-ae, utterly shocked that someone else shared her uncanny ability, didn't immediately believe it, but Hyun-Heup proved she wasn't bluffing. She knew intimate details, like Ha-young's affair with Mr. Sung-jin, the illicit relationship of another teacher, and she could even visibly discern the single S-line shimmering above Seon-ae's own head. This overwhelming evidence was more than enough to prove her words. Hyun-Heup, assuming Seon-ae was able to see the lines by wearing the special glasses, watched as Seon-ae finally revealed the truth, confirming Hyun-Heup's suspicion. Hyun-Heup, having lived with the curse of the S-lines for years, tried to warn her friend about the dangers of such power. But Seon-ae, now completely consumed by this newfound ability, defiantly declared that this was exactly what she wanted. Later that day, Seon-ae, still intrigued by the S-lines, asked Hyun-Heup how someone could potentially get rid of them. Hyun-Heup, speaking from her own painful past, gravely explained that an S-line would only disappear from someone's head when they died. When that happened, the person connected to them would also lose that specific S-line. Meanwhile, Mr. Sung-jin sat alone in his car, a chilling smile slowly spreading across his face as he stared at a picture of him and Ha-young on his phone, seemingly hatching an evil plan. At the same time, Seon-ae was enjoying an intimate moment with a boy from her school when suddenly her phone buzzed with a message from Mr. Sung-jin, telling her he already had the money and asking her to meet him on the school rooftop. After that, Seon-ae went to a photo booth with the boy, oblivious to the fact that someone in a hoodie was stealthily following them from behind. As they entered the photo booth, the mysterious stalker, who was none other than Ha-young, watched intently as Seon-ae dropped her bag. Ha-young then slipped inside and snatched it. It was then revealed that Ha-young had overheard Seon-ae's conversation with Hyun-Heup in the school toilet earlier, and now knew that Seon-ae possessed the power to see the S-lines by using a pair of glasses. This knowledge compelled her to brazenly steal the glasses from Seon-ae's hand when Seon-ae wasn't looking. However, Ha-young's triumph was short-lived because, as she walked through the city, witnessing the overwhelming S-lines all over people's heads, someone abruptly grabbed her from behind. After leaving the photo booth, Seon-ae finally realized with a jolt that she had lost her glasses, and immediately and incorrectly suspected that it was Hyun-Heup who had taken them. Hyun-Heup, however, was clearly not the culprit. Seon-ae then revealed to Hyun-Heup that she was going to the school that night, a confession that immediately made Hyun-Heup suspect something terrible was about to happen. After this alarming call, Hyun-Heup didn't hesitate for a second to go after Seon-ae, desperately hoping nothing bad would befall her friend. Seon-ae, on the other hand, had already reached the rooftop and confronted Mr. Sung-jin, who had been patiently waiting for her there. Mr. Sung-jin, visibly desperate, begged her to drop the case and promised to do anything for her if she agreed to delete the incriminating photo. But Seon-ae, consumed by her own rage, flatly refused. She was utterly sick of the teachers who constantly looked the other way, letting Ha-young and her gang mercilessly bully her, simply because they were afraid that Ha-young's boyfriend's father, who was an extremely important figure for the school, would take matters into his own powerful hands. Then, shortly after, Mr. Sung-jin received a devastating message from his wife, revealing that she too had received the photo. This was the final breaking point for him. Enraged, he spun back to Seon-ae, hysterically accusing her of having sent the photo to his wife. He furiously pushed Seon-ae to the very edge of the wall, and just as Hyun-Heup arrived at the school, frantically looking around to find Seon-ae, she witnessed the horrifying sight of Seon-ae falling from the rooftop, landing right in front of her eyes. The S-line on Seon-ae's head, however, was still visibly present, a chilling sign that she was miraculously still alive. Seon-ae was immediately rushed to the hospital to receive urgent treatment to save her life. Not long after that, while Seon-ae was undergoing a critical surgery, Ji-Wook showed up and asked Hyun-Heup, who was waiting anxiously in front of the operating room, what had happened. Hyun-Heup simply stated that she found Seon-ae falling from the rooftop as soon as she arrived at school, explaining that Seon-ae had told her she was going to school that night, and Hyun-Heup was there to meet her. One thing Hyun-Heup was absolutely sure of was that Seon-ae's fall was not a suicide. As soon as the news about Seon-ae's incident hit the school grounds, it descended into complete chaos. The teachers and staff were thrown into a frantic mess. especially knowing the news would surely tarnish their school's good name beyond repair. The Dean of Studies conveyed his profound disappointment in a firm, unyielding demeanor, and it immediately hit a nerve with the other teachers. What initially seemed to be an evaluation quickly devolved into heated arguments in no time. Amidst that commotion, a school staff member wearing glasses accidentally dropped her belongings, and the kind music teacher stepped in to help her tidy up her things. While the shocking news of Seon-A's fall continued to rock the entire school, the school's English teacher, Mr. Kim, found himself grappling with a personal crisis. His upcoming wedding had been abruptly called off due to an undisclosed problem. This led him to decide on a drastic change. He was moving to Canada to start afresh. Before his departure, he decided to stay at his sister's place. During their conversation, he inquired about his brother-in-law Byung-cheol, but his sister simply explained that Byung-cheol was out for work and typically very busy, making it unlikely they'd have a chance to meet. Meanwhile, Hyun-Heup was utterly shocked and devastated by what had happened to Seon-A. Not only because Seon-A was her friend, but also because she had witnessed the horrifying fall firsthand. Firm in her conviction that Seon-A's fall was not a suicide attempt, Hyun-Heup headed to the rooftop to search for clues. There, she encountered Kyung-jin, a student from another class. She firmly believed Seon-A's fall was not self-inflicted, and she strongly suspected Hae-young had something to do with it, especially since Hae-young had been conspicuously absent from school since the incident. As they walked down a school corridor, they passed Jun Seon, a student from Hyun-Heup's class, wearing glasses. Still determined to find Seon-A's missing glasses, Hyun-Heup stopped him, quickly grabbed the glasses he was wearing, and put them on, hoping to confirm if they were the ones she was looking for. In the teacher's office, Mr. Kim was tidying up his desk when he discovered a pair of glasses, the very same type Seon-A had been using. He asked Gyu-jin, who was sitting behind him, if they were hers. Gyu-jin looked at them intensely and confirmed they weren't, instead remarking that they must be Mr. Kim's and that they suited him well. Flattered by the comment, Mr. Kim decided to put them on. The moment the glasses settled on his face, he froze in sheer shock, suddenly witnessing the impossible. There were red S lines emanating from people's heads. Shortly after, Ji-Wook appeared, and Mr. Kim saw him covered in hundreds of these red lines. Overwhelmed, a truly stunned Mr. Kim immediately yanked the glasses off. Ji-Wook's visit was to uncover the truth behind his niece's fall. Gyu-jin offered her condolences, assuming it was a suicide attempt, and blaming herself for not being more attentive to her students. Ji-Wook, however, firmly emphasized that it was not yet confirmed as a suicide attempt. He then inquired about the student who had been bullying Seon-A. Gyu-jin informed him that Hae-young hadn't been showing up to school since the incident. Upon hearing this, Ji-Wook asked about another student, a male he recognized from a photo he'd found in Seon-A's handbag. Gyu-jin then arranged a meeting with the student. Ji-Wook went straight to the male student and directly asked about his relationship with Seon-A. The student confessed he had nothing serious to do with Seon-A. He admitted he knew she liked him and he had simply played along, finding her sudden transformation from bullied outcast to school star quite interesting. Furthermore, the student recalled that during his last date with Seon-A, he'd noticed she seemed anxious and was missing something, though he didn't know what it was. Upon returning to the office, Ji-Wook decided to review the CCTV footage near the photo booth. There, he clearly saw Hae-young taking Seon-A's handbag. He then checked another CCTV feed and found Hae-young, now unmistakably wearing a pair of glasses that Ji-Wook recognized Seon-A had been wearing for a while. After following her movements, he saw her vanish into a dark alley, the trail going cold. Meanwhile, Mr. Kim was having dinner with his sister and her husband, Byung-cheol. This time, armed with his new vision of the S-lines and finally understanding their meaning, he saw the red lines connecting his sister's husband to others, instantly realizing that Byung-cheol had been cheating on his sister. After an attempt to break the awkward silence, Byung-cheol abruptly brought up Mr. Kim's canceled wedding. Despite his wife's futile attempts to stop him, Byung-cheol pressed on. Mr. Kim, trying not to be impolite despite the sensitive topic, answered, revealing he had discovered his girlfriend's affair before their marriage. This revelation shocked them both, especially the sister. After dinner, Mr. Kim and Byung-cheol went outside. They took the elevator, and when they passed the 4th floor, Mr. Kim, now able to see the S-lines, saw the red line on Byung-cheol's head connected to someone on that floor. He, however, kept his mouth shut, choosing to observe. They then sat together outside the building to enjoy a cigarette. At that moment, Byung-cheol casually remarked that he should be keeping in closer touch with his sister. When they returned inside, while taking the elevator, Mr. Kim clearly saw Byung-cheol accidentally press the wrong floor button. It was the 4th floor, the very same floor where the person connected to Byung-cheol resided. Out of intense curiosity, when Byung-cheol wasn't looking, Mr. Kim subtly pressed that floor button again, hoping to see which room it was. But when they arrived at that floor, Byung-cheol immediately stopped him, firmly stating that they were not stopping on that floor. On the other hand, Ji-Wook was met with harsh treatment by his superior upon finding out he was investigating his niece's incident. He was sternly told to move on and turn a blind eye to the incident to keep the school's clean name intact. But Ji-Wook flatly refused, driven by his unwavering desire to seek justice for his niece. However, his investigation thus far hadn't produced any significant breakthroughs. He still couldn't unlock his niece's phone to find crucial clues. The next day, Mr. Kim discovered a wrong addressed package in front of his sister's apartment. Seeing that it was supposedly meant for a room on the 4th floor, he decided to return it to the rightful owner. And, of course, to subtly find out who the person Byung-cheol was cheating with truly was. He soon arrived at the door, but at the very last second, he hesitated and backed down, his courage failing him. However, before he left, he finally managed to ascertain the identity of the woman who lived there. To confirm her name, he discreetly looked at the mail for that room and finally discovered that her name was Chae-rin. Some other day, after a pilgrimage to honor their mother, Mr. Kim asked his sister about Byung-cheol, who was conspicuously absent for the ceremony. His sister explained that Byung-cheol was out for work and would return in a few days. Clearly, this only strengthened Mr. Kim's already growing suspicion that Byung-cheol was indeed cheating on his sister. His sister, however, didn't seem to mind Byung-cheol's absence much and instead brought up Mr. Kim's canceled marriage, mistakenly believing it was because they were parentless that his girlfriend's parents didn't bless their relationship. Mr. Kim denied it outright, correcting her that it was solely because of the cheating. He clearly still loved her, but the betrayal had hurt him so deeply. It was revealed that their own father had cheated on their mother, and when his girlfriend cheated on him, it painfully brought back that agonizing memory, creating a cycle of betrayal. The photo of Ha-young and Mr. Sung-jin's illicit relationship finally leaked to the school, sending shockwaves through the entire student body and staff. Not a single soul was not stunned by the revelation. On the other hand, Mr. Sung-jin was finally found, but tragically, he was already dead. He was discovered in his car, a clear victim of an attempted suicide. From the crime scene, Ji-Wook found a piece of paper with Mr. Sung-jin's will written on it. They also found out that Mr. Sung-jin had been deceased for at least 3 days. However, Ji-Wook didn't fully believe the suicide theory, finding it strange for someone to die in plain sight, yet only be found 3 days later. Still not giving up on his niece's case, Ji-Wook went to her school to find Hyun-Heup, knowing she was the only student he knew was genuinely close to Seon-A. He asked her if she knew the reason Seon-A returned to school that night, but Hyun-Heup answered his question with another question about Seon-A's glasses. Upon hearing the word glasses, Ji-Wook noticed something significant about them and asked what Hyun-Heup knew. Hyun-Heup, however, remained tight-lipped, refusing to answer until he was able to find the glasses. On the other hand, Mr. Kim saw Byung-cheol on the street and, driven by suspicion, immediately took a taxi to follow his car. This pursuit led him to a fancy hotel, and inside, he witnessed with his own eyes that Byung-cheol was indeed with Chae-rin, the very woman he suspected as Byung-cheol's mistress. He watched as Byung-cheol presented her with an expensive necklace. They even shared a tender moment when Byung-cheol lovingly placed the necklace on Chae-rin's neck. Unable to stand what he saw, Mr. Kim then called Byung-cheol, casually asking where he was, only to be met with a blatant lie. He decided not to confront Byung-cheol just yet, choosing instead to discreetly find out the room they were staying in. After Byung-cheol and Chae-rin returned to their room, Mr. Kim finally, decisively, confronted the man. He threatened Byung-cheol, vowing to spill the beans to his sister and to force him to end his relationship with his mistress. Byung-cheol, utterly desperate not to have this secret known by either his mistress or his wife, begged Mr. Kim to let him finish what he had started. The next day, Mr. Kim, ready to embark on his journey to Canada, bid a final goodbye to his sister. Before leaving, he asked if Byung-cheol had called. But to his surprise, Byung-chul hadn't, meaning the confrontation from the previous night remained a secret from his sister. Later at school, after tidying up his desk, Mr. Kim idly looked at Chae-rin's social media and saw a shocking post. She announced her pregnancy. This news truly snapped something in Mr. Kim. He immediately rushed back to his sister's apartment, intent on confronting Byung-chul himself. But when he arrived, he was met with a chaotic scene. His sister was desperately trying to hit Chae-rin's car with her own. Soon after, Byung-chul returned, and instead of consoling his clearly distressed wife, he shockingly hugged Chae-rin right in front of both Mr. Kim and his wife. This was the last thing Mr. Kim expected, and he completely lost control. He furiously beat Byung-chul, demanding an explanation. His sister, however, suddenly intervened and stopped him. Only after Byung-chul and Chae-rin had left did his sister finally drop the bombshell that shattered Mr. Kim's world. Chae-rin was Byung-chul's real wife. Byung-chul wasn't Mr. Kim's brother-in-law at all. What utterly shocked Mr. Kim the most was the horrifying realization that his sister was instead Byung-chul's mistress. On the other hand, Ji-Wook had noticed compelling new evidence in his niece's case. He then approached Hyun-Heup asking for an explanation about what he had just found, about the glasses Hyun-Heup had been urging him to locate and the mysterious S-line phenomenon. Hyun-Heup, realizing Ji-Wook was now aware of these secrets, finally came clean. She explained that the S-line, the red line visible on people's heads after using the glasses, represented a connection between individuals who had previously had sexual intercourse. She also revealed her own unique ability, stating she had been able to see these lines since she was born. Ji-Wook clearly couldn't fully believe such a fantastical claim. But given the unsettling fact that numerous strange cases with similar oddities had been popping up everywhere, he couldn't simply turn a blind eye to her testimony. The next day at school, Mei-sung, a school staff member who wore glasses, was called in by the dean after making the same mistake in her report. She was sternly told to redo her work. Shockingly, as she sat with the dean, Mei-sung was also able to see the S-lines, just like Hyun-Heup, and she observed that the dean didn't have any lines on her head. She then returned to her desk and began to manically play with a stapler, a subtle sign that she seemed to understand the unsettling meaning of the lines she was now seeing. Later, during lunch, Mei-sung was asked by another staff member about her personal dreams, and she proudly declared that she wanted to be an actress and had even once been scouted by a talent seeker. The dean, who was also seated at the table, expressed amazement at this revelation. Soon after, the music teacher, Mr. Park, passed by their table, and Mei-sung's attention immediately shifted entirely to him. It was abundantly clear that she harbored a significant crush on the music teacher. Later that day, a mysterious woman in a red dress with vibrant pink hair was seen walking past a road and stopping by a hotel nearby. Meanwhile, Ji-Wook and Dong-sik were busy with Seon-a's case, meticulously trying to connect the dots to find the perpetrator who had pushed her from the rooftop. They initially suspected Mr. Sung-jin was the one responsible, but further investigation couldn't definitively prove it. Moreover, Mr. Sung-jin had been declared missing during the incident, and a testimony from his family stated he had a severe fear of heights, providing a strong alibi that seemed to clear him of suspicion. Ji-Wook then cautiously told Dong-sik about the glasses Seon-a had been wearing lately and how she had seemingly become a different person after putting them on. He also, with some hesitation, revealed his knowledge of the S-line phenomenon, but Dong-sik predictably didn't believe him. Soon after, their superior entered the room and they quickly acted as if nothing out of the ordinary was happening, clearly attempting to hide their unconventional investigation from their superior. Later, it was revealed that Hyun-Heup had taken on a part-time job as a receptionist for a hotel near her house. That day, Kyung-jin and Jun-seon came to visit her, almost causing a commotion in the lobby. Hyun-Heup had to swiftly intervene, ushering them into her tiny receptionist office, where they were packed in like canned tuna. In that cramped space, Kyung-jin cleverly used the chance to push Hyun-Heup closer to Jun-seon, clearly getting the signal that Jun-seon harbored a crush on Hyun-Heup. Soon after, the same woman with pink hair approached the desk and asked for room number 206. Kyung-jin, being the nosy girl she was, peeked to get a look at the woman, and after seeing her face, she said she was familiar with her. The pink-haired woman herself went to her room, lay herself on the bed, and began a monologue, revealing she had had sex with a lot of men. However, she then met a particular person whom she couldn't take her eyes off. Later that day, when Hyun-Heup and her friends were chilling on the rooftop, they noticed the same pink-haired woman walking below them. Kyung-jin finally recognized her as Mae-sung. Jun Seon wasn't entirely sure because she looked so much different out of school context, but Kyung-jin was insistent that it was indeed her. Kyung-jin was proven correct because after leaving the hotel, the pink-haired woman returned to her small apartment, and it was revealed that her pink hair was a wig. She was, indeed, Mae-sung, leading a double life. Meanwhile, Ji-Wook was in his office, his eyes scanning through recent case files, all related to the same perplexing phenomenon, the S-line. He then went to the hospital to meet with Hyun-Heup. He specifically asked if there was any S-line visible on Seon-A's head, and, if so, to whom it was connected. Hyun-Heup confirmed she could see a single strand of S-line on Seon-A, but she didn't know where it led. Ji-Wook inquired if it was connected to the boy Seon-A had been seeing lately, and Hyun-Heup confirmed it wasn't. Later that night, Hyun-Heup was watching the news when she witnessed another murder case where the perpetrator was wearing a pair of glasses. This immediately reminded her of Ji-Wook once asking if there could be a possibility of more than one pair of those strange glasses in existence. The next day at school, Mae-sung was walking down the corridor when she heard music drifting from the music classroom. She entered and found Mr. Park sitting alone, lost in the melodies. They had a brief conversation during which Mr. Park correctly guessed that Mae-sung harbored ambitions of becoming an actress and complimented her expressive abilities. Mae-sung was visibly delighted by the compliment, especially coming from the man she had a crush on. But then her smile faltered as she noticed a single red line on Mr. Park's head. She found herself imagining if that line could, instead, be one that connected them. After school that day, Jun Seon approached Hyun-Heup. He explained that Kyung-jin had something else to do and had left early. Jun Seon then seized the opportunity to get closer to Hyun-Heup, asking her to go with him. Hyun-Heup, being a good friend, simply agreed to his invitation. Jun Seon noticed that Hyun-Heup preferred quiet places, so he decided to take her to the school's swimming pool. He then asked if Hyun-Heup knew how to swim, and she replied that she didn't. Yet, to his utter surprise, she suddenly jumped into the pool and remained submerged. Despite being unable to breathe underwater, she appeared remarkably calm, a stark contrast to Jun Seon, who was utterly panicked, convinced she was drowning. He immediately jumped in and pulled her back to the surface, but after breaking the water, she simply laughed. After getting out of the pool, Jun Seon offered Hyun-Heup his sweater, a simple gesture that, for Hyun-Heup, unexpectedly sparked the seed of love within her heart. Later, after drying themselves off and sharing some instant noodles, Hyun-Heup confessed to Jun Seon that she enjoyed being underwater because it made her feel completely at ease. She then made a significant revelation. She was able to see red lines on people's heads. Although strange, Jun Seon remarkably chose to believe her. That small time they spent together brought them much closer to each other. On the other hand, Ji-Wook had just returned to the office when a woman greeted him. Dong-sik, knowing his colleague was quite a player, teasingly asked if he had someone he was seeing. Ji-Wook confessed that there was someone he had been thinking of. The face of Gyu-jin popped into his head, but he kept her identity to himself, not revealing it to Dong-sik. The next day, Mae-sung returned to the hotel where Hyun-Heup worked, and once again, as if it were a routine, asked for room number 206. Later, when Hyun-Heup was performing room service, she overheard Mae-sung repeating the same monologue from before, over and over again, but this time with varying tones and expressions, as if practicing. However, this time, she added new details. Her ambition of becoming an actress, her serendipitous stumbling across this hotel, then her newly acquired power to see the S-lines after finding a pair of glasses, and most shockingly, her being a spectator to whatever business a patron in the next room was conducting through a hole in the wall. Shortly after, Mae-sung heard a distinct clicking sound of someone unlocking the room next to hers, and out of curiosity, she peeked through a hole in the wall. She was utterly shocked to find that the person in the next room was none other than Mr. Park. Soon after, another person entered, and it was a woman. From the S-line on their heads, which was clearly connected to each other, it was revealed that the woman was Mr. Park's partner. Then, they began their intimate business, and Mae-sung, jealousy clearly etched on her face, listened intently, knowing the man she had a crush on was having intercourse with another woman. After their encounter, the woman immediately left, but not before making a promise to meet again the very next day. After the woman left, Mae-sung immediately went to the receptionist and asked to prolong her stay. The very next day, as the same woman returned, Mei-sung attacked her from behind, dragged her to her room, and tied and gagged her. She then took the woman's clothes and, having assumed her identity, went to the room where Mr. Park was waiting. Seeing Mei-sung come into his room, of course, surprised Mr. Park immensely, especially when she began to act like a maniac, shouting the same monologue she used to say in a flirty, unhinged manner. Mr. Park, loyal to his partner, rejected Mei-sung right there and then, calling her crazy, and started walking towards the door. But suddenly, Mei-sung threw a stapler she had been clutching this entire time, hitting him and stopping him in his tracks. Then, out of the blue, he felt completely limp and fell to the floor, paralyzed. Mei-sung then dragged him to the bed and began kissing him passionately while he was unconscious. Horrifically, blood began gushing from the man's head, soaking the pillow beneath it. The shocked Mei-sung, instead of helping, reacted with disturbing manic energy, starting to hump him manically. For a short moment, Mr. Park regained consciousness, but he was still paralyzed and couldn't fight back. Then, abruptly, the light faded from his eyes as the red line on his head vanished, and his soul left his body. After witnessing the man she loved die in front of her, Mei-sung was utterly devastated. She retreated to the bathtub and, using the very stapler she had wielded against Mr. Park, began stapling herself repeatedly, all while still repeating her disturbing monologue over and over again. Meanwhile, Hyun-Heup was doing her usual room service when, to her shock, she saw the woman who had been with Mr. Park come out of Mei-sung's room, her hands and feet tied and her mouth gagged. Hyun-Heup then cautiously checked on room 205, only to find Mr. Park's dead body on the bed. Ji-Wook soon arrived at the crime scene to investigate. They found Mei-sung's dead body soaked in her own blood in the bathtub, her body covered in staples. He then asked if anyone had found a pair of glasses, and Dong-sik confirmed that they couldn't find any. Ji-Wook then went to see Hyun-Heup to get her testimony. Hyun-Heup explained that she could see a single S-line on Mei-sung's head, but it wasn't connected to Mr. Park's. She then revealed that Mei-sung's appearance and demeanor at school and at the hotel were completely different. While Mei-sung always wore her glasses at school, she never wore them at the hotel, not until she was found dead. Hyun-Heup then ominously stated that the glasses were dangerous and that they would make the person who wore them feel special and powerful. Later, Hyun-Heup's words kept replaying in Ji-Wook's mind, echoing his own growing suspicions. Finally, he decided to check the crime scene again. This time, he chose to drain the bathtub, and there, amidst the bloodied water, he found the glasses Hyun-Heup had been talking about. He took them and, out of pure curiosity, put them on. That was the pivotal moment the truth was finally and undeniably revealed to him. He was able to see those very red lines Hyun-Heup had described, and to his astonishment, he could see hundreds of them emanating from his own head. That day, Ji-Wook, now sporting his new look after snagging those peculiar glasses that let him glimpse the S-line, sauntered back into his office. All these red lines hovering over everyone's heads truly piqued his interest. He sat there silently, just observing everyone's S-lines, suddenly uncovering tidbits like a colleague secretly dating, and the jaw-dropping fact that his closest friend, Dong-sik, was a whole different breed, having only 2 strands of S-lines sprouting from his head, unlike his own countless ones. Dong-sik, eyeing the glasses and Ji-Wook's rather odd behavior, which frankly mirrored some suspect's unnerving way of scrutinizing people, asked what in the world was up with him. But before Ji-Wook could even open his mouth to answer, a high school student, sporting 4 S-lines on her head, suddenly materialized. Dong-sik immediately clocked that the student was from the same school as Seon-ae, Ji-Wook's niece, who was still tragically comatose in the hospital after her fall from the school rooftop. Later that day, Ji-Wook practically dragged a male student from Seon-ae's school, the very same one he'd once grilled about his niece's incident, a student named Ji-Won. Upon arriving at Seon-ae's hospital room, Ji-Won finally realized he was being hauled around by Ji-Wook. The sole reason Ji-Wook had brought him there was to sate his gnawing curiosity, to make absolutely certain that Ji-Won wasn't the one with a connected S-line to Seon-ae. After confirming Ji-Won wasn't linked to Seon-ae, Ji-Wook pressed him on whether he knew Seon-ae's boyfriend. Ji-Won, after a moment's reflection on his time with the girl, recalled that Seon-ae had once mentioned someone she utterly despised. That small detail handed Ji-Wook a crucial new clue in his niece's puzzling case. On the flip side, Hyun-Heup, our main character blessed with the ability to see the S-lines without needing any weird glasses, was busy chatting with her friend Kyung-jin about an upcoming birthday party. Then, she got another message, this time from Jun Seon, her class rep, who'd lately become rather chummy with her after all the bizarre events they'd navigated together. He was asking her to meet him before the party, all alone. As she smiled, seeing his chat, another message popped up, this one from an unknown number. The same one who'd previously asked her to meet at her school, claiming they knew about the world she saw, most likely referring to the S-line. Now, that number was also asking to meet before the party. The next day at school, Hyun-Heup was glued to her phone when suddenly, the same girl who'd visited the police office the other day, the one Ji-Wook and Dong-sik had seen, showed up. One of Hyun-Heup's classmates casually mentioned her name, Ji-na, and had a brief chat with her, noting that Ji-na seemed a bit off her game than usual. Meanwhile, when Ji-Wook arrived at the office that day, he was greeted by Dong-sik, who then informed him they'd just received a report of a harassment case from Seon's high school. They both watched as the student who turned out to be Ji-na was interrogated by a female detective, pressing her for details about the incident. Ji-na tearfully explained that before the incident, a senior student had invited her to join him for a drink. She reluctantly agreed, but soon she got completely stoned and fainted. The moment she regained consciousness, she found herself stripped of her clothes, and the student who'd invited her had vanished. When the detective asked if it was her first time in an intimate encounter, she, still sobbing, confirmed it was. Ji-Wook, still wearing those revealing glasses, immediately realized she was lying, a fact starkly confirmed by the 4 S-lines visibly sprouting from her head. The next day, Ji-Wook and Dong-sik headed to the high school to investigate the case and pinpoint the student Ji-na had mentioned. Upon their arrival, they were met by Gyu-Jin, Seona's homeroom teacher, who immediately recognized Ji-Wook. After buttering him up with a compliment about his glasses, she inquired what these 2 detectives were looking for at the school. Ji-Wook cut to the chase, asking about his suspect, a male student named Han-Yu, a former idol trainee. Upon meeting the student, Ji-Wook and Dong-sik went straight to interrogation. Ji-Wook immediately questioned Han-Yu about his relationship with Ji-na, and if he had indeed held a drinking party. Han-Yu, cool as a cucumber, didn't deny any of it. He admitted knowing Ji-na, whom he considered his junior, and confirmed that he'd hosted a drinking party at his apartment due to stress from his studies, although it wasn't he who proposed it. After hearing that confession, Ji-Wook dropped the bombshell. Han-Yu was embroiled in a sexual harassment case and was a prime suspect. Yet, Han-Yu, without so much as a flicker of panic, just nodded. As Ji-Wook and Dong-sik were about to leave the school, Hyun-Heup unexpectedly spotted them. She confronted Ji-Wook, realizing that the very man who once dismissed her claims now held the glasses that could reveal the red S-lines, the very object she deemed highly dangerous. She demanded the detective hand over the glasses, convinced they would only bring peril to the wearer. But Ji-Wook, firm in his belief that the glasses were the crucial tool to crack the cases he was working on and uncover information about his niece, flat out refused. He intended to keep them. Hyun-Heup, still desperate to persuade Ji-Wook to part with the glasses to avert danger, brought up Seona's incident and how every recent case seemed inexplicably linked to that peculiar pair of spectacles. She even tried to snatch the glasses right off Ji-Wook's face, but he once again stubbornly refused to give them up. Their heated argument quickly drew the attention of Gyu-Jin, who happened to be passing by. She inquired what was going on, and Ji-Wook, clearly flustered, simply mumbled that it was nothing, vaguely mentioning that Hyun-Heup was his neighbor. After clearing up the awkward misunderstanding, he awkwardly asked if Gyu-Jin would like to have dinner with him. As soon as the words left his mouth, he beat a hasty retreat, blushing furiously. Then, a shocking plot twist unfurled. As Ji-Wook walked away, Gyu-Jin wore an eerie smile. It turned out she, too, possessed the ability to see the S-lines. And just like Hyun-Heup, she could do it without the aid of any glasses. Later that day, Ji-Wook and Dong-sik visited the company where Han-Yu and, surprisingly, Ji-na as well worked as idol trainees. They were informed that Ji-na's true character was a far cry from what she'd claimed during her interrogation. She wasn't a particularly talented trainee, and worse, she was a bad apple who would often lure other trainees into drinking with boys and skipping training, a behavior the company found utterly unacceptable for a trainee. Upon leaving, Dong-sik voiced his frustration with the complexity of the case. He believed it was a thorny issue, given that both the alleged victim and suspect were idle trainees, figures widely discussed, and most critically underage. He was convinced either Ji-na or the company had falsified their testimonies, but figuring out which one was true and finding definitive clues was proving incredibly difficult. Then, out of the blue, Dong-sik abruptly asked Ji-Wook if he harbored a crush on Seon-A's homeroom teacher, Gyu-Jin. Ji-Wook, visibly caught off guard that his colleague had somehow noticed his feelings, denied it vehemently. Long story short, Dong-sik conducted another interrogation session with Han-yu to dig up more information. This time, he requested Han-yu show him the messages he'd exchanged with Ji-na before the incident. Han-yu, still calm as a cucumber, handed over his phone. The messages clearly showed that it was Ji-na who had initiated the meeting and suggested staying at his place, even proposing they have a drink. In the other room, simultaneously, Ji-Wook was also interrogating Ji-na, now accompanied by what appeared to be her mother. He pressed her on whether she had truly been sexually violated by Han-yu, and she steadfastly insisted it was true. Suddenly, Ji-Wook received a message from Dong-sik, informing him that he would allow Han-yu to leave. Ji-Wook immediately flung open the door and waited for Han-yu to pass by. As the boy walked past their room, Ji-Wook's eyes confirmed it. The single S-line on Han-yu's head was not connected to Ji-na, unequivocally proving that Ji-na was falsely accusing Han-yu of sexual harassment. Finally, armed with concrete evidence that the girl was lying, he once again asked Ji-na if she had indeed been sexually harassed. This time, the girl remained reluctant to say anything, solidifying Ji-Wook's conviction that she had been lying all along. Later that evening, upon arriving home, Ji-Wook found Hyun-Heup patiently waiting for him by the porch of her apartment. She then examined the glasses Ji-Wook possessed and confirmed they were indeed the ones she had been searching for. After that, Ji-Wook handed her a photo, a picture of her and her mother. He then explained that he had looked into her parents' case and believed that what had happened to them wasn't her fault, reassuring her that she shouldn't blame herself. He then asked if she wanted to see her mother, but Hyun-Heup expressed reluctance, believing her mother must have died. Otherwise, she would surely see her if she were still alive. Ji-Wook gently countered, explaining that perhaps there was a deeper reason, and just like the glasses he was wearing, that very reason might hold the key to saving someone's life. Suddenly, Ji-Wook brought up Ji-na, explaining that the girl had reported a sexual assault, but he suspected she was actually lying after seeing 4 S-lines on her head. Hyun-Heup knew about the report, but she denied that Ji-na was lying, stating that a week ago Ji-na hadn't had a single S-line. Upon hearing that, Ji-Wook immediately called Dong-sik, instructing him not to hand over the case and demanding another investigation. They then headed to Han-yu's apartment to investigate. Upon arrival, they noticed the place was spotless, and to their surprise, Han-yu was a total clean freak. They asked if he'd kept the empty wine bottle from the night of the incident, and he confirmed he hadn't. Meanwhile, Hyun-Heup was seen returning to the hotel where the last major case, the murder of Mr. Park, her school's music teacher, had occurred. As she entered using her own key, a woman witnessed it from afar. As Hyun-Heup entered the dark hotel, she recalled her conversation with Ji-Wook about how he'd found the glasses. She firmly believed someone who had made the glasses had deliberately left them for him to discover. Ji-Wook, however, couldn't wrap his head around it, asking how the person could possibly know he'd returned to the crime scene after the initial investigation. Hyun-Heup finally reached the murder scene room. There, she looked at herself in the mirror when suddenly she realized someone was approaching. She was shocked to find that the person was Jun Seon, who explained he'd seen her entering the hotel and decided to follow her inside. At that moment, Hyun-Heup reminded him about her strange power to see the S-lines and was about to tell him she could see something on his head. But he recoiled in fear, thinking there was something else on his head, and suddenly pulled her into a hug. That led to them sharing a truly romantic moment. As Jun Seon leaned in for a kiss, Hyun-Heup asked if he would stay by her side, even though she was strange. Then she leaned in, and they shared a lovely kiss. The very next day, early in the morning, Ji-Wook and Dong-sik checked the trash bin near Han-yu's apartment building, meticulously searching for a clue to the case. As they ransacked through the bin, they finally found something, a strange plastic bag. As soon as Ji-Wook opened it, he noticed something peculiar. It was revealed that the thing inside was the same bedsheet Han-yu had used the other night when they'd visited his apartment. Ji-Wook believed it had been deliberately trashed to remove evidence. Yet, he recalled there was no single S-line connecting Ji-na to Han-yu, meaning Han-yu hadn't assaulted Ji-na. This discovery only added to the confusion. After finding the sheet, Han-Yu was called in for another investigation. They immediately questioned him about the sheet, and Han-Yu calmly reminded them of his clean freak nature, stating that was the sole reason he'd thrown it away. He simply didn't want to use a bedsheet someone else had slept on. Dong-sik then confronted him about Jina's blood found on the sheet, but Han-Yu calmly suggested it probably came from her nosebleed or menstruation. Suddenly, Ji-Wook stepped in, declaring that he believed Han-Yu wasn't the suspect who had assaulted Jina. That was when Han-Yu revealed that he'd never had a crush on or even liked Jina, but she'd constantly wanted to come to his apartment, so he'd finally relented. At that moment, they'd shared a drink, and Jina had gotten completely hammered. Then, she'd finished the bottle, so Han-Yu had stepped out to buy cheap beer from a nearby convenience store. After he'd returned, he'd given her the beer, and she'd promptly fainted. Upon hearing this, Ji-Wook pressed him on how he'd been able to buy beer despite being underage. Han-Yu simply stated that the store hadn't checked his ID. After the interrogation, Ji-Wook and Dong-sik checked the CCTV footage near the apartment building. There, Ji-Wook noticed a pivotal piece of evidence. So far, he knew Ji-Na had 4 S-lines on her head, and he believed this meant 4 people had assaulted her. So, when he saw a group of 4 boys walking near the apartment, he meticulously checked how many S-lines they had when they arrived and how many they had when they left. Sure enough, his hunch was correct. These 4 boys each had an extra S-line when they left, and he believed they were the perpetrators he was looking for. On the other hand, Hyun-Heup finally pinpointed the perpetrators when she saw 4 boys who attended the same school as her, each with an S-line connected to Jina. She immediately called Ji-Wook, but Ji-Wook was already there. He'd already figured it out himself. Soon, each of the boys was called to the office and subjected to separate interrogations. One of them was visibly anxious during his session, and Ji-Wook sensed an opportunity to crack him. So, he took the boy to the crime scene, pretended they already knew about his involvement to loosen his tongue, and then deliberately scared him. The boy had a brief chance to escape, but they caught him again in short order. When the boy Ji-Wook had cornered asked about his friends, Ji-Wook calmly told him the police had let them go home, assuring him they weren't suspected of any involvement. But on the contrary, he was the one under suspicion. Believing he'd been set up by his buddies, the boy finally broke, confessing he was indeed the perpetrator. But he hadn't been working alone. All of his friends were involved, and the shocking truth was that Han-Yu was the mastermind of the crime. This, it turned out, was just a ruse to get the boy to confess, as it was later revealed that his friends were still back at the office and had already spilled the beans themselves. That was all Ji-Wook needed to confront Han-Yu. In the interrogation room, Ji-Wook presented the key evidence, a vial of what looked like a sleeping drug found in Han-Yu's room. At first, Han-Yu denied it was his or that he'd used it to drug Jina. But after Ji-Wook revealed he knew about the 4 boys Han-Yu had manipulated to assault Jina, Han-Yu finally broke character. His crime was finally revealed. Later, Ji-Wook was seen in a car with Hyun-Heup when suddenly a call came from the nursing home where Ji-Wook's father stayed. Upon seeing the caller ID, Ji-Wook dropped off Hyun-Heup at the bus stop and sped straight to the nursing home. It turned out his father had gone missing. After checking the CCTV, they saw that a woman had brought his father out, and shockingly, that woman was none other than Gyu-Jin, Seon-ae, and Hyun-Heup's homeroom teacher. Suddenly, Ji-Wook received a message. It was a photo of Seon-ae on her hospital bed. Knowing something grim was about to happen, he rushed to check on his niece. He also immediately called Dong-sik to dig up information about Gyu-Jin. Upon arriving at Seon-ae's room, he was relieved that his niece was still there, sleeping undisturbed on her bed. But then, he saw the single S-line on her head leading directly to the door. And at that very moment, something he would never have expected was revealed. It was his father, and he had a single S-line connected to Seon-ae, a horrifying revelation that he was the person who had been sleeping with Seon-ae. This discovery sent Ji-Wook straight into a state of denial, hysterically demanding to know what his father had done to Seon-ae. On the other hand, Hyun-Heup was seen sitting on the stairs, her hands completely bloodied. She was in tears, clearly terrified by what had transpired earlier. She then reached for her phone and tried to call someone. Somewhere else, in a cafe in the city, a woman was working as a barista when suddenly she received a video. As she watched, she saw a man and a woman being intimate. She was utterly devastated. It seemed the man was her partner, and he was cheating on her. She broke down in tears pretty quickly. At the same time, a fellow college student just arrived at her class when she too received a message containing the same scandalous video. It was then revealed that she was the woman in the video, and someone was blackmailing her. Later that day, the woman who worked in the cafe had just closed the place. Still in her devastation after discovering her man had cheated, she looked out at the road. She then walked toward it, and just as incoming traffic bore down on her, she stepped onto the road, trying to end it all once and for all. But in the very last second, someone pulled her back. It turned out to be Gyu-Jin. After leading the woman back inside the cafe, Gyu-Jin handed her a pair of glasses, the same kind that allowed people to see the S-line. She claimed they might be the woman's, as she'd found them nearby. It was then revealed that all along it was Gyu-Jin who had been distributing the glasses to people of her choice. Back to that night, after Hyun-Heup was dropped off by Ji-Wook, she was seen meeting with Jun-Seon. She had clearly planned this, asking him to come with her. Their surprising destination was a love hotel, as Hyun-Heup had decided she wanted her first S-line to be with Jun-Seon, the boy she liked. Although Jun-Seon was reluctant at first, Hyun-Heup convinced him that she wanted it if it was with him. And finally, they had their intimate session, which led to a single S-line connecting them both. Later, after leaving the hotel, Jun-Seon suggested they grab a bite and asked Hyun-Heup to wait for him. As she waited, she glanced at her reflection in the store window and saw that single S-line on her head. But that happiness was short-lived, because soon after, something truly terrible happened. The S-line suddenly vanished, indicating a grim fate for Jun-Seon, and moments later, she heard a chilling scream. That was it. She found Jun-Seon lying on the concrete, his body impaled by iron rods, blood gushing from him. In that horrifying moment, the memory of her mother killing her father flooded Hyun-Heup's mind. She blamed herself, believing she was cursed. That, she realized, was why her hands had been bloodied earlier. As she sat on the stairs, someone sent her a video. It was Kyung-Jin in the video, tied to a chair, her mouth taped shut as she screamed. Hyun-Heup had no one to call but Ji-Wook. Upon meeting with Ji-Wook and spilling everything, Hyun-Heup learned about what had happened to Seon-A. She then revealed that someone had been sending her messages, all connected to the S-line, and this time, it was that chilling video of Kyung-Jin being kidnapped. She suggested that this person might be responsible for everything that had transpired, including the incidents involving Seon-A and Ji-Wook's father. Hearing this, Ji-Wook remembered the face of Gyu-Jin from the CCTV footage he'd seen earlier at the nursing home. They went straight to the school, certain that was where Kyung-Jin was being held. While Hyun-Heup went to look for her, Ji-Wook set off to find Gyu-Jin. After locating Kyung-Jin, Hyun-Heup asked why she was at school, and Kyung-Jin revealed she'd received a message, supposedly from Hyun-Heup, asking her to meet there, which was clearly impossible, since Hyun-Heup didn't send her any message. They immediately went to find Ji-Wook to warn him that danger was lurking. But after attempting to go downstairs, they found themselves on the same floor, caught in a loop. Realizing there was no way to descend, they headed to the rooftop. Meanwhile, Ji-Wook found himself in front of a strange door. Upon entering it, he was shocked by the dark room filled with numerous women, all in identical dresses, and one woman standing before them with a knife in her hands, facing a man on a table. It was revealed that the woman was the one who worked at the cafe. After receiving the glasses from Gyu-Jin, she had been incited to end the lives of the men connected to her with the S-line. And the man on the table was none other than the very last one alive who still had an S-line linked to her. As the man desperately begged her to spare his life, the woman, clearly brainwashed by Gyu-Jin, ignored him and in a quick swoop, beheaded him. Meanwhile, Hyun-Heup and Kyung-Jin were still on the rooftop when, suddenly, Kyung-Jin had a pair of glasses on her face. She revealed that she finally understood the world Hyun-Heup saw through her eyes. She then asked if it was true that one could see the red lines without the glasses if they died. She explained that it was Gyu-Jin who had told her about this, finally revealing to Hyun-Heup that her own homeroom teacher was the one orchestrating the entire S-line phenomenon. On the other hand, after witnessing the sheer horror before his eyes, Ji-Wook finally saw the very figure he'd been looking for, Gyu-Jin. But this time, instead of having no S-lines on her head, she had a ton of them, even more than he possessed. She then revealed another person on the table, and to Ji-Wook's utter shock, it was his father, tied and helpless. Gyu-Jin then took a knife and presented it to Ji-Wook, urging him to end it all to save Seon-A. But at the very last second, he hesitated and lunged at Gyu-Jin instead. Somehow, he was no match for her. Her strength was off the charts. With a single swoop, Ji-Wook was tossed aside, and then, She swiftly did what Ji-Wook couldn't. She killed his father. Ji-Wook, utterly shaken by what he had just witnessed, told Gyu-Jin to drop the knife, but she refused. Instead, she walked menacingly towards him. Scared, Ji-Wook drew his gun, but somehow, as if there was an invisible shield, the bullet deflected right off her. She then grabbed him by the neck and choked him, holding him effortlessly in the air as if he weighed nothing. Ji-Wook, gasping for air, desperately blamed Gyu-Jin for what had happened to his niece. Meanwhile, Hyun-Heup fought for her life against Kyung-Jin, who suddenly choked her. Hyun-Heup quickly realized that the glasses were making Kyung-Jin act this way, so she ripped them off and hurled them away. Kyung-Jin, seemingly panicked, tried to retrieve the glasses, but Hyun-Heup stopped her. Then, in a swift move, Hyun-Heup stomped on them, crushing them completely. Kyung-Jin shrieked hysterically at the sight, but shortly after, she finally snapped back to her senses, clearly having no idea what had just happened. In that moment, she noticed a fresh scratch on Hyun-Heup's face and the uncanny sight of Hyun-Heup's eyes, which had changed colors. The blood from the wound, defying gravity, floated midair up towards the sky. They both looked up, and suddenly, Hyun-Heup found herself in the same eerie room as Gyu-Jin and Ji-Wook. Coming face to face with Gyu-Jin, Hyun-Heup confronted her for the chaos she had unleashed upon the world and for the curse that had befallen her. Gyu-Jin, however, countered that it was never a curse, but a blessing. She claimed Hyun-Heup was born with that power for this very day, to bring her power to its ultimate peak. She then unveiled her true identity, stating she was born from the desire of a human being who yearned to see the S-lines, who longed to uncover people's deepest secrets. The people around them began to form a circle, trapping Hyun-Heup with Gyu-Jin in the middle. Gyu-Jin stood ready, knife in hand, poised to end Hyun-Heup's life and awaken her true power. She advanced, her hand prepared to strike, but in the very last second, someone bravely jumped in front of Hyun-Heup, shielding her from the blade. As the person collapsed to the floor, Hyun-Heup recognized her. To her horror, the person dying in front of her was her mother, the very woman who had abandoned her all this time. Her mother then spoke, apologizing for coming too late. She revealed that she had learned the truth about her husband's affair thanks to those very cursed glasses, which she had somehow possessed back then. She apologized for making Hyun-Heup's life miserable by letting her blame herself for what had happened, and assured her it was never her fault. After uttering those words, she finally breathed her last. Enraged by her mother's death, Hyun-Heup lashed out at Gyu-Jin, but her attack was reckless. Gyu-Jin managed to stab her, inflicting a severe wound. Hyun-Heup's blood welled from the wound and floated upwards to the sky. And with that, Gyu-Jin's true power awakened. The ability to bestow upon every single human being on Earth the power to see the S-lines. Just as Gyu-Jin thought everything was done, a scratch suddenly formed on her cheek. It was Hyun-Heup, still alive after being stabbed. She snatched the knife and plunged it into Gyu-Jin's stomach. But Gyu-Jin, with a chilling smile, declared it was too late, as she had successfully awakened her power. As Gyu-Jin dropped dead to the floor, the people there frantically ran in panic. Suddenly, Hyun-Heup and Ji-Wook found themselves back on the rooftop. Kyung-Jin approached and asked what had happened. It was clear the world had plunged into chaos as everyone was now able to see the S-lines. The sky had turned red, and the damage was done. A year later, after the world had calmed from the initial panic, everyone managed to live alongside the S-lines. Hyun-Heup had become normal, as seeing S-lines was now a universal experience. Seon-ae had recovered, and her relationship with Ji-Wook had improved. That day, Hyun-Heup went on a pilgrimage to Jun Seon's grave when, suddenly, Gyu-Jin appeared from behind her.